run. We had 2 rainy days, and when the rain stopped, all of a sudden there was buds on every single tree and flowers and everywhere, and all the tulips and daffodils are up, and it's just gorgeous. Love it. Burst of color.
We had snow today.
Snow.
Mhm.
How's the political climate? I heard you had problems again.
Very,
So-
very painful. Mhm.
Sad, terribly sad.
Yeah. I was going to call Ann Rest, and I contacted her Sunday unaware of what was going on yet. And she left my phone number and she texted me back and said she was so upset. She said, I just can't right now. I can't talk. And because it's just a couple blocks from the edge of her district, she said.
She's a member of our church, but she's a state senator.
So please keep her in your prayers too, because she was most upset. We all are, but she loves her constituents.
Yeah. Well, it's a terrible, terrible situation all through the country, not just in your neck of the woods. It's just.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Ron.
I have to see who everyone is. Oh, there we go.
You've got the most precious looking grandbaby. Oh my
Oh.
goodness. Saw that picture today with her bunnies.
Oh, really? No, you're right. Well, we're blessed. I'll just say it short and sweet. It's been pretty cool, pretty amazing.
Hi, Austin.
Oh,
Oh, there's Amber too.
Whole family is on the call tonight.
yep.
Is it Leo?
This is Leon.
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 Say hi.
What a cutie.
Yeah.
Oh, he's gonna say hi.
Hi.
Too cute.
Hi, Chris.
Hey.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, I'm here, kind of.
Kind of. How you doing, Chris?
Had a panic attack in the middle of the night last night, so I didn't sleep well, and so I feel lousy. So therefore, I'm going to be mostly muted and camera off.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm here to listen.
Hope you feel better.
Hope you feel better.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I know Jeff is around because he was just in a prior meeting, so he'll chime in here pretty soon.
Well, we're
Jerry's-
missing quite a few,
Jerry's still in California
but he's here.
at my favorite Palm Beach,
Palm Beach.
favorite condo.
Happy to show off my swirling palm blades.
I don't think we got above about 35 today, Jerry.
Holy moly. Well, and the locals here, it's been in 95 every day since Easter until today. And you should hear the weatherman. It's only going to 78 today. It's going to be really cool. Watch out for high winds.
Ooh,
It's,
burr.
it's
Well, Gene said the wind chill was like 24 when he went for his walk.
Everybody get out their parka.
Yep.
Yeah,
We
seriously.
haven't put them away.
No, I'm talking
Yeah.
I'm talking about in Palm, where Jerry is. Get their fur jackets out. It was under 80.
And go see again. Someone feels like they're missing out, I think.
Hi. Hi, Leon. Oh, you're so cute.
Whoa, uh-oh.
Where's Jude?
Jude is still awake too. He's watching a little bit of Mr. Rogers right before bed.
Okay.
He's in another room. Hey, do you want to say hello real quick? You want to come over here and put some hello?
Oh.
It's always fun to see people's expressions when they're first coming on because they don't know if the camera's on them or not.
Yeah.
There
There he is.
he is.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Okay.
Salute.
Let's prove it.
Hi. Those are cute kids. How old are they?
How old are you?
4.
4 and 1.
4. Aw, my girls are 3 and 1. We'll have to do a play date sometime.
Oh, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Hello, Heath.
He's being a goon.
Wait, what?
That's good.
I know, strange, isn't it?
Don't remember mine at that age.
While we're having side conversations, Carmen, please tell Wilson that I did fill out the form online, so that's all done.
Judy called on my landline and Tony called on my cell phone and they can't get in. So Jerry, could you send them the link? David and Judy.
Where's Joe?
Was that a yes?
Those are the,
David, it has,
David Peters and Judy Stewart.
okay, it's not changed, so
I know, but when I first went on about 20 after the hour, it said that the meeting had ended.
it was
By
probably
the host.
because you went on before it's officially, I think when you come on and you're probably were the first one to come on, it probably is still reflecting the last meeting. But anyway,
Yeah.
I will disappear.
Actually
And see what I can do.
I sent you a panic text. But
I got it. I also got the email, and by the time
Yeah.
I looked to fix it, you said fix
Here
it.
I went. All right, it's now 6 minutes after our starting time, and while I want everybody to be on, we have a huge agenda tonight, and so I'm gonna get started, and then two that are not yet on will join us and they'll catch on. I just wanted to say I'm joining tonight with two hearts. One that's filled with such enthusiasm for the way you guys have been emailing back and forth and all the people you've spoken to and the enthusiasm that you're displaying and all the good feelings. And I especially want to thank Carolyn because she put together a list of 47 pastors' names. I think she has a special place in heaven next to God, and, for 50 years from now, reserved for her with her name on it. So thank you, Carolyn, especially. So that's the one heart. That's my big heart, and but I also have a grieving heart for your community, with another senseless death of a young person of color, and which happened in your neck of the woods this time, but it's happened too frequently in our country, and it really points to a big healing that needs to take place in our country. So maybe a piece of the vision that you will ultimately create Spirit of Hope will somehow incorporate that and help the healing that our nation needs as well. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't want to, like that's not happening. And what I'm going to suggest, since there's so many on the call, that you do mute yourself. We don't. I'm getting a lot of feedback right now. So if you're not muted, please put yourself on mute. That will help. That's really fun. Jerry, could you mute yourself too, please? I don't know where it's coming.
So Carolyn, I just got that email sent.
Okay. Jerry, could you please mute yourself? I'm not sure where the static is coming from, but, oh, I think it was you. All right, great. And as I've done 100 times this year, started speaking without unmuting myself, even though we're so used to it, but we'll try to, if we start doing this when you're speaking and we can't hear you, know that means unmute yourself. Our goal for this evening is to know and appreciate the past of Spirit of Hope. And it's a big history, so it's a lot to incorporate. So if we don't get it all, and we might run a few minutes over, I won't run, I want to make up for the time we started, but we might just start, we may complete it next time. We will have time next time. The reason why I do this to remind you all is that if we were building a house, the past is the foundation. And as you all know, and you live in a climate that requires a good foundation, because without a good foundation, the house will not stand. I lived 25 years in Miami, and there's no foundations there. They just throw down a slab of concrete and they build a house on it. And that's why they get blown down in the hurricanes. So a good foundation creates a good house. And so using that metaphor, tonight is the night we lay down the foundation of your precious church. The present will be the walls, and then the vision will be all the beautiful things that you'll put into that house that makes it a house you want to come to over and over again. So I'd like to start with the two mission statements that I believe Jerry has graciously put in the chat. One is the mission of the United Methodist Church writ large, and then the other is the mission statement of your particular church, Spirit of Hope. So if you go to the chat.
Terry, I had it all ready to go until I had to copy the email address, so it'll take me a minute.
Okay. I have them written down here the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Jerry. So, Jeff, would you please unmute yourself and read the first of the two mission statements, the one for the United Methodist Church?
Sure.
Please.
The United Methodist mission of the United Methodist Church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world.
Okay, would you read that once more time, but a little bit slower this
All
time?
right. The mission of the United Methodist Church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we look at your particular mission, what does that evoke for anybody? What comes up for you when you hear that mission, which is, the mission of your movement, your church, your faith denomination?
A lot of outreach.
Yeah. I think that's what we try to do.
There used to be a visual image where it said, invite, nurture, and send out, which I
Mhm.
thought was a wonderful image because it would, had an arrow coming, the invite to come into the world, to nurture, and then send out. So I like that.
I think it also means to not accept the status quo.
Okay, good. Alyssa, I thought,
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit on the opposite side, and it feels a little vague to me. It feels too broad. It feels, I mean, it doesn't explain to me what the Methodist faith is meant to do.
okay,
Because I feel like that's every Christian, is to make disciples, so that's just my 2 cents.
yeah. I happened to do a little extra homework and I looked at a couple of mission statements for a couple of other church denominations, and I didn't see this in any other, but what do I know? I'm the only Jewish guy on this screen, so. But I didn't see it. I thought this was particular to your church, but I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Anybody else? What do you hear? What is evoking you?
Transformation is a huge concept, a huge word, and maybe vague, but certainly talks about dramatic change. And we sometimes speak in more specific terms of healing a broken world, that sort of thing. But that's I'm grasping for words. That's just a concept that really stretches us, I think, pulls at us.
Yeah. Okay. Transformation of the world. That's a pretty big job you guys got.
So my interpretation of, I kind of drawn toward the word transformation, and I kind of viewed it as kind of constant. This world is, feel like the world is constantly changing, and so I feel like it'd be, as the world is constantly changing, we're constantly trying to adapt to what the world is. But at the same time, I also kind of agree with Alyssa. I think that statement itself seems really big and it's too open-ended. It's hard to really.
Okay. All right, so let's switch to the Spirit of Hope mission. And Jerry, would you please read that aloud for us?
We are called by God to be a radically inclusive, caring community of faith, offering personal and social transformation through Jesus Christ.
Okay, excellent. So I'll ask the same question. What is evoked for you when you hear your church's mission?
When I was reading this to get it ready to put here, I had similar thoughts to Alyssa, because for the transformation of the world reminds me of me growing up in my conservative evangelical environment where the Christians were called to change the world in one way. And what I like about ours, because we put the radically inclusive at the beginning, which has needed some explanation over the years, it then suggests that we are offering our version of transformation, not the version of it all.
Okay.
Jerry, could you read it again, please?
Did she ask me to read it again?
Yes.
Sure. We are called by God to be a radically inclusive, caring community of faith, offering personal and social transformation through Jesus Christ.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
You may not have seen it's in the chat on the side. So if you want to read it, Judy. But
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
was
it's in.
I was going to say, I remember Rick Ireland did a whole sermon on what that mission statement and specifically radically inclusive means. And it's quite a charge to us to be radically inclusive.
Mhm.
I can tell you how that came about, that mission statement. I had been pushing Rick Ireland for us to become a reconciling congregation. And he was really reluctant to do so. He thought it would split the congregation. So what he offered was that new mission statement about being radically inclusive, and hope that that would satisfy the requirements, I guess. So that's how that came about. I was not entirely satisfied with it, but it was better than nothing.
And it allows for reconciliation. Because one could say to be radically inclusive means to include everyone.
Some people automatically presume that's the number one definition of that. And I like that our church has explored going beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
I like
What else?
the radically inclusive speaks to me because growing up in a faith that seems to be radically exclusive, this was very important to me as I explored new faith. So I love it.
I had a feeling you were going to say that, Alyssa.
You know, that
Anybody
radically inclusive part brings to mind a conversation I had with someone that used to be on the city council that is now a state representative for our area. And he came to our church for some, we were paying this huge assessment to the city for street improvements and whatnot. And he looked around at the group there and he sees someone in our congregation who will go unnamed, who is fairly conservative. And he said to me, "That guy is a member of your congregation?" And I said, "Yeah, we are radically inclusive." So it goes both ways, you know. So I thought that was an interesting observation by him.
Yeah, you even allow conservatives in that church, right? You include him too. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else want to add anything in terms of what these mission statements evoke for you?
I mean, to me, just what you talked of in the beginning with recent events, you know, social transformation really speaks to me. And I think that's important. I think I have had similar experiences that others have had. I grew up in South Dakota in a small, very conservative church. And, the radically inclusive and the social transformation really speaks to me. So I feel that they're important.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anybody want to have the last word on this before we move on? Okay, so this mission statement, remember, will serve as your foundation. I've called it an anchor. Everything that you will build in your vision will somehow be drawn from it. The vision obviously will get more specifics, more grand, if you will, in some ways, but it will be drawn from what you say you exist to be, because a mission statement is like our personal missions. We all have a personal mission in life, that which we're called by God to do. A mission statement of a church also says what God calls you as a community of faith to do, what you exist to be. And so your vision will come out of this statement of being, because the vision is kind of point to more of the doing. This is who you are, who you be as a church. So, and I think it's beautiful, personally. I think it's really expresses what I've heard from you, what I know of your church, I think it's a really an excellent mission statement. And so okay, you have a great foundation. Today we're going to build this evening. We're going to build a little bit more on that foundation. If I was at the church and we were in a big conference room, I would now have one of those enormous pieces of butcher block paper taped up to the wall, and it would start back on the left-hand side with the date 1882, and then it would come to the right side. It would be 2021, and all of these dates and everything that you're going to add, I would be putting up with different color markers up on that, and we would see this big visual. Unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity. So what I did for myself, and I don't know if you want to take notes tonight, but what I did is I divided your timeline into decades, but I started with 1950 because I figured that in terms of your personal histories, probably no one was a member of the church prior to 1950. But if I'm wrong about that, I do have 1940 on my timeline as well. So and so when I look at this timeline, I saw some key dates. The Watertown Road Church was in 1882. It then moved to Golden Valley Road in 1890. 1945 was a banner year. He burned up the mortgage, which is a nice way for the church to announce its financial health, because that means a lot of people have been contributing from their means. The decade of the 50s saw the first choir, the first voice, and saw you breaking ground on Harold Avenue. The next decade saw the construction begin, the church dedicated, and the name change. It also saw the Harold Avenue Nursery School. The following decade of the 70s had you find your first assistant pastor was appointed, your first Christian educator. The preschool was subsumed by the Sunshine Valley Preschool, which still is a part of your community. And you had Zimmerman Pipe Organ was put into the building, which is, I see Jerry is the only one cheering right now, but I'm sure okay, and Alyssa now, I'm sure everybody loves that. In the 80s, you burnt in a mortgage again, it speaks of commitment. 1990 saw a visionary process through the Phoenix Process Group. You became Spirit of Hope in that decade, and you became a reconciling church in that decade as well. And in 2020, you had a vision process, which we will look at pieces of next time that we're together. And so what I'd like to ask for you tonight is first your personal history. I want to put each of you on that timeline as well, because a church is, yes, a church is a building, but more importantly, a church is a community of individuals and families. And you create the community. We see that buildings come and go, and people do come and go as well. But it's important that you're part of that history as well. And so you're on this timeline. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do, and I'm going to ask you to, I'm not going to be mean about this, but I'm going to give you a 2-minute time limit. I won't stop you, but try to keep yourself to 2 minutes. I want you to answer the question, what brought me to the church? What brought me to Spirit of Hope? And when was that? Okay, so that's, you can answer for yourself and your family if you want, or you can answer just for yourself personally. But make sure you get in there as well. What brought me to the Spirit of Hope Church, and when was that? So we'll all have a chance. When you're ready, just unmute yourself and jump right in there.
I'll jump in because
Okay.
these details are hot on my mind since Ron asked me about it today. I had been working in very conservative evangelical churches, loving the music program, but not feeling like it was nurturing my more inclusive, open soul. And so I quit a church job without knowing where I was headed. And my friends Paul and Dennis, who were the organist and choir director at Golden Valley United Methodist, said, Jerry, you've got to come over and sing and play, and we'll just have a grand old time. And I did that starting in 1988. And a year later, each of them left, and I was asked to take the combined job. And that was officially, my official start was September of 1989.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for starting us off. You're on the timeline now.
Oops, Jane and I joined in 1971. We moved to Minnesota in on New Year's Eve, 1968. And since we had both met at a small Methodist school in southern Kansas, we looked in the phone book for a Methodist church. And that's why we're there.
Okay.
My story follows Carolyn's very closely. We joined in 1971 as well. And we had moved here from Chicago. We went to another Methodist church for a short time, then moved to Golden Valley. And here we are.
I'll be next since I'm in that same group. I joined in 1970 or 71. And Pastor Jackson was just leaving. What was important to me is we had 2 small children, and I was concerned about the nursery, even during church as well. And I liked that they had activities for everyone to do, and that's one of the things I found when I was calling people, is that people liked that they had a men's basketball team, they had lots of activities for the family, women's association and so forth. But it was a very, very friendly place to be, and I still find it that way. Lots of things to do to help out.
Thank you, Judy.
We came in about 1980, and the first thing we were looking for was for Christian education for our children, and then found it a friendly pace, became more and more involved, and it was then the service opportunities that have kept us here all these years.
Okay, thank you, Judy. I'm sorry, Joanne. Judy was just finished. You. Thank you, Joanne.
Well, I think we're going chronologically, so I'll be next, I think. We joined in 1985. It was our son had just been born less than a year earlier. We had been attending various Catholic churches because my wife, Donna, grew up in Catholic churches, and neither of us found them very satisfying. And one day Donna says, say, I was driving on Highway 55, and there's a Methodist church over there on 55. It was pretty close to our house. We were living in St. Louis Park at the time. And so we came one Sunday, and that was it. We never left.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thanks, Donna, too.
So I think
Well, I was gonna say, you kind of skipped over me because I started in 81. And the reason I knew about this church was because in high school in Fort Dodge, Iowa, my MYF group had taken a weekend trip up to the Twin Cities, and someone from that church had an in with someone at Golden Valley Church because we stayed in the church that weekend. And when we moved to Minnetonka, I said, I think I'm really close to that church where we were. and looked it up, and yes, we were, and attended and loved it right away. I was telling this to Ron Lundquist earlier today that we started out attending the early service, and eventually it came to be that we were going most often to the later service because of music, but it's just been such a welcoming place all along.
Yep.
Chris, could you tell me what an MYF group is?
Methodist Youth Fellowship.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I can go next because I think there's going to be a big jump forward in time, although probably I'm leaving somebody out.
We're not trying to make it perfect chronologically.
Yeah.
As long as we get everybody on the list. That's okay. Carmen, when?
Yeah, so I'm not as sure about the dates as everybody else is, but we moved from Minneapolis to St. Louis Park in about 2004, I'm going to say. And we kept going to our church, which was Oakland Avenue United Methodist, for a few years. It was really hard to give up that church. But then eventually I felt like we were needing something more organized for our kids. We had let's see, they were 3 and 7 maybe at that point. And maybe 4 and 8, I don't know. But so in about 2010, I'm going to say, we started to come to Spirit of Hope, and because it was close by and it was Methodist, because we live very close, and right away, they just pulled the kids right into things, and the kids thought that was great. So that was how we got there.
Good. Thanks, Carmen.
I'll go next. So I think some of you might know that we're a blended family. And so Heath actually started coming to Spirit of Hope about a year before I did. He was going through his divorce, and he just found himself needing something to help him through it. This is about 2011 or 2012. And he found it very healing. And so he just started coming on his own. And then we started dating, and he was like, I really like this church. I'm going to be there. I was like, I'll go with you. Sure. Whatever. I'd been going to my own Catholic church, and it was fine. But I joined him every now and then at Spirit of Hope, and we met Ruth, and she was just so sweet and friendly and welcoming, and everyone was so welcoming. And the closer we got together, the more addicted I became. And we got married in 2014. And we became members in, I want to say 2015, after Jeff had been there. So kind of a hopscotch, but divorce brought us to Spirit of Hope. but it's been lovely.
There's a blessing in everything.
Come to find out, there is. It never feels like it at the time, but it's, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a legend in the Talmud, and the rabbi is called Rabbi Gamzu, which means also this, because whatever befell him or whatever befell anybody, he would say Gamzu l'tova, which translated means this will also turn out for the good. He had this ultimate confidence that no matter what happened, that ultimately it would lead to something good. And so he was known as Rabbi also this. So even in our down moments. Okay, thank you, Alyssa. Who hasn't had a chance to share yet?
I'll go. My husband and I came to Spirit of Hope kind of on a whim. it was really hard for me to separate from the church where I grew up, where my dad was the pastor, but he said, you need to go to a church in the city where you can affect more change and have more fun. So I was like, okay. So we went Palm Sunday. I can't remember the year, but we had our little girl with us. And it was the first church we had been to where we didn't get dirty looks for having a noisy baby. And in fact, a couple times when I tried to get up, a really nice woman next to me said, no, you sit down. She's okay. You sit down. We love having babies here. And I was like, oh, maybe we should go here. And then we were kind of weathering the storms of family illnesses and our family kind of falling apart. And it was a great place to come and feel grounded. And it also was great to listen to a sermon that actually brought me to tears every week because it was I felt so connected.
And who is that pastor with the great sermons, Haley?
Mr. Pastor Jeff Hansen.
Okay, so you can take a little appreciation, Pastor, right? That's okay. That's all right. Thank you, Haley. All right.
You're not the only one he brings to tears, let me tell you.
Same.
Yeah, so yeah, my wife and I moved to the Minneapolis area in 2014, and our son in 2015, and moved to the Plymouth area out of from downtown Minneapolis. Then we were kind of looking for a church. My wife grew up in a Methodist church. Her father was a pastor, and I grew up Lutheran. And so we were just kind of looking around for any type of church and tried a couple some places, and then came across Spirit of Hope, and yeah, everybody was just welcoming. We greatly enjoyed Jeff's sermons, and we just decided this was definitely the place we got to stay.
Thanks, Levi. I think Christopher, I hope you're still with us. I see your picture.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on camera because earlier my wife said, wow, you look terrible. And I said, thanks, I feel terrible too. So we had been living in Champlin. Well, I'm originally from southern Minnesota and my wife's from St. Louis. She was originally Missouri Synod Lutheran, and but then she started hanging out with me and my Methodist friends and stuff like that at campus, the Wesley Foundation at Drake University in Des Moines. So then she liked Methodism a lot better. And so that's how she joined our ranks. Anyway, we then lived in Champlin for a few years and went to a Methodist church up in Osseo. Then we moved to Robbinsdale in 2007, and so many of the people at our previous church were all from the Northwest Metro. And here we were, even though we're only about 15 minutes away, we felt really kind of disconnected. Then, of course, I was on a long-term planning committee there and was church council chair and a bunch of other stuff. I got burned out at our old church, and despite the best efforts of our long-term planning committee and such like that to try to reach out, be outwardly focused and forward thinking, we met so much resistance that actually none of us are there anymore. So then a few years ago, we thought we ended up being kind of churchless for a little while, and then decided, we should find something around here. Okay, so well, there's this church down on 55, this Methodist church that we drive by all the time with the rainbow flag out front. So they have to be a lot more progressive and forward thinking than a lot of the others. So we came there on Rally Sunday in, I think it was 2017. It was about 3.5 years ago. Immediately we felt welcomed. We were not fawned over like fresh meat, like we've run into a handful of places. Pastor, yeah, he was pretty cool and laid back and friendly, and not stiff or anything like that. Like his, the starchy collar was clearly unbuttoned. And I also absolutely loved the music, so that drew me in. So then I think we started coming back like all the time and really, really liked it. So just kind of everything about it.
Terrific. Thank you, Christopher. You sound fine. I don't know what your wife is saying and you don't look good, but
I look
trust her.
better. I look much better in that picture than I do right in real life right now.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're here in voice and in spirit as well. Austin, I think you're the last one.
Yep, yeah, I can go. We moved to Golden Valley about 5 years ago. And as we said in the beginning, a year later, we had Jude. And we wanted to get him baptized, and we were also looking for a church in the area. We wanted a reconciling church. That was one thing we were. And it just so happens it was within walking distance, so from our house. That made it easy. So we were going to have Jude baptized there. And Jerry played Hey Jude on the piano when he was baptized. And I will never forget that. That was super cool. And I do remember Jeff's sermon being pretty moving. And we've been there ever since. So it's been a great welcoming place.
All right. I think that's everybody. Would anybody like, oh, Ron, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I'm going to make sure that we did not save the best for last when I tell my story. So first, I have to admit that I grew up in Golden Valley, and it's always a hard thing to say because I now live in Golden Valley as an adult. So we moved here 28 years ago. I know that because that was the year Mallory, my youngest daughter, was born. And we were lazy about it, lazy about church finding, because we started to go to the church I grew up in, which is Calvary Lutheran Church, which at the time was somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people, still one of the largest congregations in the country, Lutheran congregation. But we found them skewing towards my way or the highway type of philosophy. And that wasn't me, that wasn't us. So we decided to do church shopping. And Chris is absolutely correct. The fresh meat thing, if you haven't done church shopping, and I hope you haven't for a long time, it is really hard. But the day we walked into Spirit of Hope, Jerry Rubino was playing can songs. Sorry. He was playing music from my youth. So it was a sign. And then Rick Ireland, a sign for me of a good preacher, a good speaker, is someone who doesn't use notes, just like Pastor Jeff. They know what they're talking about. They've spent the time on it. And Rick Ireland was charismatic, and he just preached the lights out that day. And I said, this is it. We're not church shopping anymore. So I apologize for melting down there, but it really was the music and the pastor that drew us in. And it's the people and the connections and what this church does for the community that has kept us here all this time.
Thank you, Ron. What year was that? I didn't catch that.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's because I didn't say it. Would have been about the year 2000.
Okay, great. All right. Wow. Does anybody would anybody like to add something to their personal story before I ask you to share anything you found out in the homework that you're doing from other people's stories? And one article I saw that Austin posted. I think, Austin, you sent an article that you found. Judy, could you tilt your screen a little bit so we can see your face? Because I keep missing half your face. If you would tilt it a little towards you, it would be.
I'd like to add a couple of things. One of these
Sure.
things, my husband doesn't like to share, but we had a first experience with Golden Valley, which probably brought us there later. But when my husband was still in school, the first summer, he liked to play baseball. And the church we were attending, which was Park Avenue United Methodist at the time, only had a slow pitch team, and he wanted to play regular softball. So he called around and found out that Golden Valley had a team. So they took us in, we played ball, they were friendly, and they also knew we wanted a cat, and somebody brought us a cat to the ball game. Our first cat that lived 21 years was from Golden Valley. So then we left the state for a few years, but when we came back and ended up living in New Hope, Golden Valley was nearby.
I'm glad.
Thanks for adding that. That was great. Especially as a new cat daddy. Anything else that anybody else would like to add to your personal story of joining?
I found when I was calling people that most of the people I talked to have been here for 40 and 50 years, and I've known their children. So we had some wonderful conversations because it's been a whole lifetime of being at that church and being a very, very important part of our life.
So Judy, thanks for getting this part of my the evening started. If you had the opportunity this past week to speak to anyone, what if you would feel free to share their story? You don't have to share names necessarily, but if you could share the stories that you heard, any key themes that came up for you, and what was the experience like of speaking to, finding out about people who have been around the church for a while?
Well, I'll go. It was a wonderful experience for me. I knew all these people fairly well, but I asked them two questions. One, what we were supposed to ask, how did they find the church? And the other question I ask is, in the past years, what did you enjoy most that you were involved in?
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to Carolyn and Chuck Sidebottom, and they joined the church in 1983, and they joined because neighbors invited them. And I said, well, who were they? And they said, well, they only were there a couple of years, so I didn't even know who the neighbors were, but that's how they got there. And Carolyn remembers in 2013, she did a women's fashion tee. And I remember that too.
Oh,
It was quite spectacular. And then Chuck said what he worked on that he really enjoyed the most was the building expansion. And that's the last project that we had, where we got our wonderful, lobby and rooms and all that. So that's from the Sidebottoms. And then Daryl and Darlene Kelke, they said that, Darlene said we joined the church because Daryl was Methodist and it was the closest one. And that was in 1965. And Daryl remembers working on the organ before we got the Zimmer organ. And he said it was like 5 old cars that we were trying to put together to make one organ work. But he said about 25 people worked on that, and they made great friends. So that was a project he remembers. Darlene remembers being part of the women's group in her circle, and also meeting people in preschool, in the Sunshine, well, it was Harold Avenue Preschool, and she met moms from that. So and then talked to I talked to the Henrys. The Henrys, Linda and Paul Henry, said that Linda said that she lived nearby in the 80s in an apartment nearby, and it was before she married Paul, and that she was driving into town every day and passed by and just decided that that's where she would visit, and felt very, very welcomed. And they're the couple that Paul is Catholic, so they alternate Sundays. Yep. So they'll go to the Catholic church one Sunday and then they'll come. But they've worked this out and seems to work for them. But what they both have said that they have been really involved in is our refugee family. And this was about 3 years ago that wasn't it, Joanne, about 3 years ago?
It'll be 4 in June.
Anyway, when she started telling me about it, and I was part of a group that was involved in that, but haven't been recently, because we were told after 6 months we really needed to let them kind of be on their own and learn how to do things. But the Henrys have been very involved with them, you know, and it's a mom and a dad and four kids, right? And but anyway, this is the latest thing. They're buying a house through Habitat. In these 4 years, they've managed to do that. And it talk about starting to cry. I said I just couldn't stop crying to even talk to them. Just the idea that they've been this successful and the people are still living the American dream, but with a lot of help.
Yeah.
And they have gotten a lot of help from our church. So that was just a wonderful, wonderful thing I could share.
Yeah. You know, you save one life, you've saved the world.
I also talked to 3 people and between them and myself, it was over 200 years of participation in this church. And I think that the 3 things that overrid for all of us were the friendliness of the people when we came and the long-term friendships that have occurred.
Yeah.
And the opportunities to serve, which is a big part of what I do at the church. And I can just mention to Carolyn, I think we're going to be painting a house this summer for our refugee family. So that'll be one of our next projects. And then the third piece is the education piece that we've provided for adults and kids. Those were sort of the overriding things that I heard time and time again.
Thank you, Joanne. Anybody, who else had a chance to speak to someone?
I'll jump in and talk about the conversation I had with Gary Plager. So I focused on 4 questions, you know, when did you start? Why? What do you miss? And what do you think about the future? Not an exciting story for how the Plagers came to Spirit of Hope. Gary grew up Methodist. Jan, his wife, was Catholic, but they decided to go to a Methodist church. Proximity, Spirit of Hope was the closest one. Back then, they started in about 88, 89, right about the time Jerry Rubino was coming on board. He's done a lot of volunteer things throughout the years with the church, you know, which is not worth going into, but anyone who knows him, he's been involved a lot with finance. The thing that he misses the most is the connections and the people at church. And he and I both commiserated also. One of the wonderful things about this church is the volunteer opportunities and the good things that it does for our community. And then we got into an interesting discussion because Gary shared with me that, you know, he usually doesn't watch Spirit of Hope, the service. He'll catch it on YouTube or something like that. He says, I'm one of the ones that watch it, but he'll check out other congregations. So he taught me a few things because we both agree that this Pandora's box that we've opened up, no, that's not the right way to say it, not a Pandora's box. Now that we've gone online with our service, I don't think we're going to be able to close that one up. And, you know, I know that's not a discussion we resolved tonight, but I just don't see that closing. But Gary revealed to me that we're the only ones that does it live. Everyone else, they pre-record it during the week and they edit it and do all this other stuff to it to make it real fancy or sometimes overproduced. But we're the only ones out there, I'll call it this way, that are kind of the prairie home companions of Spirit of Hope, you know? So, and with that, he says, one of the things I like about that is we're a little quirky. And to that end, he says, you know, I kind of like it when Jerry unintentionally photobombs Pastor Jeff during the sermon without realizing what he's doing. And Pastor Jeff kind of giggles because he just figured out what just happened. So, you know, so he kind of revealed these things and I'm going, you know, he's right. There's a folksy sense of family about it. And yet at the same time, as we have heard, we can get a sermon out of this that just stops us in our tracks and makes us think. So it was a really interesting conversation once we launched into that direction. So that was my conversation with Gary. And now I need to pause before I talk about Jerry Rubino, I need to take a break.
One thing that I didn't mention seemed interesting to me is a couple of the people said that they had been invited. And I think that's something interesting that we need to put a big star by, that we don't forget that it's really good to still invite people.
Yep. Okay. As they say in the delis here in New York, and what else?
All right, I'll jump back in and talk about Jerry, but I want to recognize that's been kind of been recognized. There's quite some institutional knowledge on this in this call between Joanne and Carolyn and anyone that's, you know, or Chris. Chris, I learned today is a 40-year member of the church, and I had no idea. It's like she says, you know, she tried to make the joke that she started when she was 2 years old, but anyway, it's but I need to appreciate the institutional knowledge. But this is where I need to jump over to Jerry, because Jerry, he and Carolyn too had a presence on the staff for much of the journey that we are on for our present day. And that includes some dark times as well. I mean, there has been a lot of joy under them. We can acknowledge that Rick Ireland was a very charismatic, very get it done guy, very big thinker. But when he left the church, we were in disarray. And from that disarray, for those of you who weren't here, we had some dark times. And we were challenged financially. And one of the things that we did to resolve that was we did some internal fundraising to keep like your music program going or your children's education. And that caused strife in the church. And that led us into being a congregation that had to go through a year of counseling and working things out. So those are chapters of where we are today, because some of the fun, deciding to build that addition, as wonderful it's been, means that we have another mortgage that we have to burn. And when we were being financially challenged, it was a real difficult time for us. But switching back to a more positive, if I was to add some highlights for Jerry's being present in the church, I would want to add that in 1995, the quartet was added. Something very unusual that they're paid to be there. They sing, and more importantly, they are part of the choir, which is huge for the quality of our music. 1999, the grand piano was purchased. What service would be normal? What would our service be like if we didn't have that grand piano? An organ is wonderful, but it wouldn't do everything we need to do in that church. And an upright piano is wonderful. It might be in a bar. It's not going to work at Spirit Home. And then the other part would be Paul David coming on board, and the way he was able to expand our program. Okay, somehow I shifted away from some of the things I want to say about Jerry, but Jerry did mention that we should also recognize an important part of what we need to think about for our church and coming back together is a place for our youth ministry, and that we don't have a person that's doing that. And that includes the music and things like that. So it's like, as we look what the vision is going to be when we reopen, we have to think about the things that are going to attract the younger members of the community. Because as I look around on this call, we have our younger ones, and then a lot of us are aging out. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm so thankful to see everyone on the call, but it's like, we need to attract the younger audience to say a viable congregation. So Jerry, somehow I think I strayed from talking about your story, but I just want to recognize that you in particular have been a firsthand witness throughout the experience that we've had since you've come on board. And that speaks so much to where we are today. And I need to also mention Dave Peters in this too, because all these people were around when I first started. So I'm going to back out now because that was more than 2 minutes.
Well, these are not limited to 2 minutes. Those are your first ones for 2 minutes. So you're fine. You're good. Anybody else have an opportunity to talk to anybody during this week that they would like to add their stories as well?
Well, I took the assignment a little bit differently. I decided that rather than find out why people came, why do people stay? Why are there a bunch of us here 50 years? And so I started thinking about that. Jeff, don't take this personally at all, but my motto is ministers come and go, but the congregation is always here. And so the congregation is the life of this church, as our ministers and everybody. But we have found a lot of things to do just for our own entertainment and bonding and for the good of the community as well. And I just started making a list, and I'll read through it really quickly. And this is only a partial list. I've heard stuff tonight that I didn't even think about, but ways to get involved in this church for some of the newer people. administrative board stuff. There are all kinds of committees. We have 2 book clubs. We have an adult forum. We have the Stevens Ministry. There's the choir, the bells, the orchestra, Sunday school teachers. Joanne is involved in knitting mittens every year. We've served at Simpson forever. Chris has been involved in that for a long time. We serve dinner to door. Joanne's involved in that. Back when, 20 years ago or so, a bunch of us went through a program called Cursillo, which was a rather intense program over a weekend and faith building. Boundary Waters canoe trips for the youth with Ron. And the building committee was an arduous process. That was a 5-year process of meetings to get to the building. And we made a lot of friends and didn't quite make some enemies, but we worked at it sometimes. It was a tough process. Spring cleanup of church. We have mission trips to Appalachia, Sunday dinners at the church, Prism. We're very much involved in Prism, United Methodist Women, and Bible study classes, pie auctions, one of the highlights of my time here, and silent auctions with formal dinners, and on and on and on. And that's how a congregation sticks together, not only by faith, but by bonding through these other jobs and social activities. And we're very good at that, I think. That's all.
That's a lot. Thank you. Thank you, David. I grabbed the cat because she was about to leave the meeting. She's, I have a touch screen. And she's almost on it. So she likes to come here when I'm working. Okay, great. Anybody else see anyone else, speak to anyone else?
I did.
Haley, go ahead.
Oh, wait, I'll be really quick. So I talked to Gloria Peck, who
We have plenty of time.
okay. I want to be best friends with Gloria. After talking to her, I talked to her for about 45 minutes. It was the best phone call ever. She joined the church in 1987. She was newly separated. She was a single mom, and it was refreshing for her to be in a church where it was okay to be single, which I was like, oh, I hear that, because, I'm so used to seeing the traditional, the mom, the dad, and the 2.5 children or whatever. So she has always seen this space as welcoming to different kinds of families, which I think is really important and crucial to any church surviving. And she joined the Reconciling Ministries Committee. I believe that's what it's called. I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but she was the chair of the committee for about 15 years. And in 2006, that's the year the church became a reconciling congregation. And she had, the way she framed it was that the pastor was a little bit worried that would be too divisive. And she said, her words exactly, you have to take a chance to do something that important. Sorry. She wrote up the proposal for the congregation and what their stance was on becoming a reconciling congregation. Over 100 people responded, and about 80% of them were in favor. And they celebrated with Ann Reed, who I'm not sure who that is, but there was a big celebration with Ann Reed, and it was apparently incredible. It was in October 2006. That's the reconciling anniversary, as I'm sure everybody already knows, but this is brand new to me, so this was very exciting. And it continues to be celebrated. I love that, the rebirth of the church kind of birthday is that's so beautiful. And she talked about the involvement in Twin Cities Pride and other local pride events, which I think as a church, that's entirely badass. And what's even more badass is that the flag was stolen 2 times and y'all replaced it. And as a young person yearning to see the church do something right, that's so amazing. And to go to Pride, and they had peace sign necklaces that they put on people at Pride, and they said, peace to you. That's so beautiful. That's what we want. That's what, my students want. That's what other young people want. That's what we were begging for, was just more inclusivity. So literally talking to her was the best. We're friends on Facebook now, so I'm super excited. We're going to get coffee sometime. I loved every second of talking to her, and it made me so proud to have joined this church. Seriously, super proud. So I don't know. I'm grateful to all of you for being open to that, because that's going to save lives. And I'm not over exaggerating. I work with these kids. It's going to save lives to be that welcoming. So that's my piece. Thank you, Gloria. She's the best.
Now I'm crying.
Terry, I'll go next. Well, Haley, it was great to hear that story, because I was pushing for several years for us to become reconciling before we actually took the step. And it was 100 people, and the vote was exactly 80-20. So, and we probably lost a few people as a result of that, but we gained a lot more, I think, as a result. I kind of cheated today. I didn't have a chance to talk to anybody. So I went over to the church and I picked this up. Has anyone seen that? It's Stories to Tell. It's a book that of biographies that Andy Anderson, now departed, wrote several years ago. He went around the congregation to individuals that he knew, and some he didn't, and wrote their biography. And they don't all say in their biography why they chose to come to Spirit of Hope, but a few of them did. And it was always the welcoming aspect of our congregation. But sitting where Donna and I sit in the church, towards the back, near the door, we get a lot of new shoppers coming in, and I always make it a point, if it's someone I haven't seen before, to welcome them and ask them how they ended up there. And we're very blessed by location, I can tell you that. We're very visible from Highway 55. And when we put that flag up, everyone now knows that that's the church with the flag. And a number of people have told me, well, I came here because I saw the flag, the rainbow flag on the side of the building. And quite a few of them have stayed and become leadership in the church. So those are the two reasons that I've found that people attend. And it's being welcoming, it's being well located, it's having an outward statement. As the baptism rite used to say, an outward and visible sign of our commitment. So that's my insight.
So mine's connected to that too. I talked to Michelle Scherer, who's her family, which is David Weinkoff, and then they have the three kids, Tiva and Owen and Audrey. They started to come, they used to go to Calvary, which they felt was too big and was not, so people here will know that that's kind of right across the highway, and it's Lutheran, and I think much more conservative. And there was some sort of political event she was talking about, and she couldn't remember exactly what it was, but I think there was something where people were being told how to vote. And it was related to, I think, gay rights and maybe marriage. I don't know. Anyway, she said that, they had been thinking that Calvary wasn't right for them. It was too big. The pastor had, baptized the kids, but couldn't remember who they were, that kind of thing. And they got a letter telling them how to vote.
Ooh.
And so then she started looking around, and then it came to Spirit of Hope. And, partly is that they saw us and our kids were in the same grade and we're friends. And so that was sort of, it was comforting in a way, because they had never been to Methodist church and weren't sure what that meant. came from conservative Lutheran background, and so thought it might mean all kinds of things. Anyway, it's interesting that I don't know that they were necessarily attracted by the reconciling thing specifically, but we're sort of definitely pushed away from a different place on the other end of that. And it turned out to be a place where people were friendly and welcoming, and where their kids had could feel that they were building connections with people and with the place.
Great. Thank you, Carmen.
Might I
Anybody else?
share a story that goes along with the reconciling theme? This is a conversation I had not this week, but some time back with a member who was not a fan of the flag. And one Sunday, this person said, I think that's been up long enough. We should take it down. And I said, well, it's interesting that you should say that, because just last week, we had this family come. Their son just came out some time ago, and they were living in Tennessee. They're from this area, but they had moved to Tennessee for employment. And they realized that that was not a safe environment for their gay son. So they came back to the Twin Cities, and then drove past the church and saw the flag, and knew that that would be the place where their son would be safe. And so that's why they landed there. I said, that flag tells people this is sanctuary. This is, you're safe here. I don't think we dare take it down. And that was the end of that conversation, and it didn't come up again.
Yeah. And not only are their children safe, but their families are safe too. Yeah. That's great. Anybody else? Any other stories? I know our hearts are being expanded here tonight, so I'm feeling the tears, but they're tears of pride and joy.
I think
Nothing
just
sad here.
one more thing about the flag. It's been replaced several times, but the interesting thing is we've also had 2 or 3 offers to replace it if it ever needs to be done again. Mayor of the city offered to replace it, and the company that makes them has offered to replace it if it's ever torn down again.
And our mayor is Jewish, and he came over and dedicated the 3rd flag, and he was just proud to be there. So I just thought you should know that, Terry.
I was going to mention that too. Yeah, he was Jewish and he came over and said he would buy a flag for us if we ever needed another one. And then another man from, I think, south of here had flags and let the church know that if we needed another flag, he would be glad to replace it. So we've had a lot of affirmation.
Sure. That's what happens when you do the right thing. You get affirmation from the universe. Anybody else? Austin, you want to tell about that article you sent? What?
Oh,
Yeah, I was just I didn't have a lot of time this week to reach out to others. A lot of my time was 10 o'clock to 1 in the morning. So I was just doing some research and looking at some of the former pastors with maybe hopes of reaching out. And then I read the article that being in an obituary that she had passed away. But I thought it was interesting how the article or the obituary talked about how she wove art and creativity into worship. And I think that's something that definitely that Spirit of Hope does, and that's another aspect that has really drawn me to this church.
Okay.
I can speak to Susan's tenure there because it was only for about 9 months.
Yep.
But one of the things that got my family back to regular attendance at church was that they were having outside services on Wednesday nights during the summers for anyone who wanted to come. And it was a small group. Joanne Grimm was often there, but I was there with my two rambunctious boys and Susan Blondes. And so we really got to know her very, very well. And I still miss her. She was really a great spirit. But very welcoming and very spiritual and very tolerant of two rambunctious boys. So I will go on to say that one of the themes that I heard in talking to a couple different people over the weekend and today was that there's a core group of members of our church that have stuck through a lot of the ups and downs through the years and speaks to that the piece that it's not the church, it's not the building, it's not the staff, it's the faith community that holds up the church. And these people, Ron, you went over a lot of the ups and downs that you've experienced, but there were some others before then that there were those faithful people, as you called them today, pillars of the church that kept me coming back, kept my family coming back. And music, music, music. Nobody's talking a lot about that, but we have the most fantastic music program anywhere. And not just because I'm in it, but because of Jerry and Paul David and a lot of people who live for the music of the church.
Okay, well, it's a lot. And I wanted to end this evening by talking about, and Chris just mentioned the word, what themes have emerged for you as you've listened to each other and what brought each of you to the church, as well as you've listened to the stories of others to whom people have spoken. What are some of the emerging themes that you've heard that really, really comprise who you are as a church faith community? I've been writing some of the themes that I've heard during this time, if you see, and this is I'm not going to read these words because I want you to add more, but I have a whole page of themes that have emerged that, and by the way, they've all been said more than once. But this is not an individual said something, but when I hear something twice, I've written it down. I got a lot here. What have you heard? What are the themes that you've heard that if you were going to, somebody called you and said, so what are the 5 themes that define your church, your faith community? What would you say? What did you hear tonight?
One big one is service.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
by service, Carolyn, by service, you mean service to the community, not the worship.
Yes. Right. Well, that's certainly important too. But, beyond that, the different ways people, that's part of our reaching out, that's part of our statement that to be active in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Say, one word I've been hearing and welcoming is a big theme that I was hearing, and music would be the other one that is really a big key part of it as well.
Yep. What else?
It's grounding.
Say more about that, Alyssa, please. What do you mean by grounding?
Grounding meaning, well, specifically when Heath and I were just starting out. It's just this, and I still continue to feel it almost 10 years later, this centering and grounding, like in what's important and your faith and your connection with God. Very grounding.
Well, I think
Okay, good.
maybe going along with that would be nurturing. I hear so many people saying they cared for one another. And it kind of goes beyond just the education that we do, but it's sort of like people, from learning about one another, care for one another.
Yeah.
I would want to throw out the word active, and I think that list that David put together was phenomenal, because I've witnessed just about everything that he talked about or participated in many things. And it's phenomenal because we're not a big church. We don't have a large congregation, but yet all the things that we put our fingers into and are active in, it's really quite active, and it's very amazing. Humbling, actually.
Judy, you're muted. I see your lips moving, but we don't hear you. No. And scroll down at the bottom, you'll see that there's a microphone. It probably has a line through it. There you go.
Okay. One of the things that we didn't mention was Children's Chance, which is a book ministry at our church. And in fact, a great deal of our main level of our church is stores books, and we send them to Jamaica. We send them to several places. And there are many people in our church that do a lot of work with that, collecting them and shipping them and helping pay for them. Helping pay for the program.
Right.
I want to just echo what Judy said, because it's like, for us to not say that earlier, that was a major oversight. I'll just say on my part, because I think the aggressors are up to 70 shipping containers of books and computers and everything else to foreign countries. And again, it's like a one-person organization, and it's all volunteers, and it operates out of our church. And it's really quite a phenomenal and heartwarming thing that he has done.
Yes.
Well, I've heard reconciling, I've heard welcoming, and I've heard music multiple times. I don't know, Terry, are you doing a word bubble? Have you seen those things? But I think if you were to diagram it, those would be the three things that I would say. Service certainly is a part of it too.
Yes.
When Dave was naming off all those things, I thought, gee, I've done every one of those at some point, so it's part of our DNA to do that.
Right.
Well, even the youth going to Appalachia, and then we were connected with Kingswood when it was there, and had urban servants where the kids would come into the city and do work. So, with our youth, starting with our youth, they did. And they would go and help package food, and also not only the adults were involved in outreach, so working like that. So we had youth programs too.
Right. So as I said, that the purpose of tonight was to create the foundation, and the foundation will be of your church is created out of certain reoccurring themes that really make Spirit of Hope the unique place that it is. And so we'll, and some of them are what you said. I heard welcoming on all kinds of levels, that people just feel welcome at your church. Doesn't matter whether they are single moms or they have rambunctious kids or whatever it is, but people genuinely feel a sense of welcome. I heard, of course, reconciling came up. many times, and I think that's also a piece of that welcome, that everybody is welcome at your church and they feel it. It's not just a slogan that you say. People genuinely feel that, and you can't really fake that. I mean, you can maybe get people in the door that way, but unless it's real, they're not going to stay. And we know that people have lots of choices today, and they can choose not to join at all, not to belong. And it's not like when I was growing up. My father belonged to 3 synagogues because that's what you do. You know, he didn't go to any of them, but he belonged because it's important to belong. Those days are over. So people belong when it means something to them. The opportunities to serve, I heard that in many, so many opportunities to serve on so many different levels and in all age levels as well. Nurturing, caring. I mean, so this is the foundational stuff of your church built, and it's all with the background of great sermons and great music playing in the background. So it's also very important. So what we're going to be doing next is kind of taking a look at what's real today, okay? Because we want to dream big, but we don't want to be ridiculous. And so we're going to start to look at what the reality is of right now. But we're going to hold on to those themes, okay? Because that's the strength. That's really the core strength of the church. And you will need to build on those themes going forward. Any vision that you create without those themes is not going to be who you are. So you've heard them. We've all heard them. Our hearts have been expanded by listening. Beautiful stories, real emotion. This is what makes you great. So I want to thank you. I want to appreciate all of you for the time you took tonight and the time that you have taken to make Spirit of Hope the unique place it is. And this is, we're halfway through our process. I feel like I'm already going to miss you when we're not together. It's like, I really feel like we've bonded. It's really pretty impressive. You're impressive. And I thank you for your spirit. And we'll see you next week, and we'll continue the work. And like I said each time, anything comes up for you and said, "Ooh, I wish I had said this to Terry," or on the call, just either shoot me an email or give me a call, and I'll make sure it's in my notes. Take care, everybody. Continue healing for your community.
Thank you.
Have a blessed week.
All right.
You guys-
Bye, everyone.
Bye all.
Everybody.
Everyone.
Travels, Jerry.
Thank you.
And
Bye-bye.
on to the link to get in. It's the same every week.
Okay. Are you going to be coming back home, Jerry, this week? Or are you
Thursday,
staying
yes. I'll be back on Thursday.
Safe travels.
Thank you. Also, oh,